Because I have my reasons. You have to read the blog.
He wants it to. He's trying to convince himself. That's where he's at in his life.
There's no convincing it. It's just a bad movie.
If he keeps trying hard enough, it'll be good.
Welcome to the Five Libraries Podcast. Thank you for joining us again. We had some technical difficulties a few minutes ago, being technical difficulties being that we weren't doing a good intro to the podcast. So we're going to start again for you guys. Hope everybody's doing well today. John, how you doing, bud?
I'm froze. It's been 2 days of out in the snow.
Hey, John has been a do-gooder this week.
I have been a do-gooder. I was I worked for Metro Parks this week with a bunch of 8th graders to do some environmental improvements to the park out here by our house, Sun Valley Park. We thought it was going to be just a couple of hours of putting down some mulch. When we got there were 16 house-sized piles of mulch that were brought in there by dump truck and 400 trees that had to be remulched in the park.
So this wasn't court-ordered.
Yeah,
I'm
just
It
glad you finally got your community hours in for that incident.
Well, you had to do something.
The incident
that we don't discuss anymore. When I was 15, it has a long
involves a brownie.
237,000 hours of community service.
Wow.
It was bad. Just finished that up.
Wow.
It's good to hear, John.
That's good that you got that wrapped up.
Paid your debt to society.
Yeah,
How long is 237,000 hours?
A long time.
Was that the movie
Aaron,
with James Franco?
Aaron,
you there?
Oh yeah, I'm here. I'm sorry. I was in Wikipedia. Sorry.
Aaron is grossly in depth in Toy Story right now.
Aaron is still trying to do research for tonight's podcast.
Well, Aaron is consumed by this week's podcast topic, as we all are to a certain extent. As you've probably heard, if you're listening to this podcast or watching this podcast, you probably have heard that Toys R Us is going out of business. And a major part of our childhood, because let's face it, everyone in this room is some sort of a dweeb, was toys and action figures. So we're going to discuss Toys R Us's ultimate demise and how we think it affects the toy the toy industry. But first, we're going to go around the room and discuss our 3 favorite toy lines from our childhood. Brian, you can start first, bud. What were your 3 favorite toy lines?
He-Man, Mask, and Transformers.
He-Man still hurts. Aaron,
It hurts real bad.
It stings.
Yeah.
Real bad.
Why does it sting?
We can't talk about that on the podcast.
We'll briefly say that
I bawled like a baby leaving church
We had
one night.
all the figures.
we had everybody and
Castle Grayskull.
everything, and
Snake Mountain.
This guy came through and said He-Man was evil, and
There they all went.
there they all went.
Why, just out of curiosity, why were they evil?
Because they had a skull on them.
Hang on,
No, wasn't there like a spirit of some sort?
It's the Masters of the Universe.
The only master of the
Master
universe is our
and
Lord
he
and
did.
Savior.
Yeah. Then the other big group of toys we lost as a child was down when we lived down in Florida. Everybody had screened-in back porches, and we had a bunch of our toys out on the screened-in back porch because it's locked. You can leave your toys out there. And we looked out there one day, and a giant black snake had gotten in there and slithered all over our toys. And so my mom, for whatever reason, said, we just can't keep those toys anymore now that snake's touched them. And I think we threw away like 2 garbage bag fulls of toys.
Because of
Yeah, we were real
salmonella or
little.
because of, the devil is a snake?
It was the early 80s. It was probably, the Satanic Panic or something.
Satanic panic.
Speaking
Yeah.
of
No, I
satanic
think it was literally germs.
Yeah, it was the poison. The snake
the
was
thing.
poisonous and it touched the toys.
So
Your all's parents were not that type of family. It wasn't like the lowered theds.
the Satanic Panic?
Well-
did you not just hear our He-Man story?
Yeah, but also your mom took us to see
Dragons
Dumb
and
and
all
Dumber.
Do what?
Your mom took us to see Dumb and Dumber.
That was later.
Yeah, I'm just saying.
That was in the 90s, but it
We're
was just-
talking 80s.
It wasn't a satanic panic in the 90s.
John, what were your 3 favorite toy lines from your childhood?
Oh my goodness, I had so many. I had so many toys.
#blessed.
Yes, I was. We had a giant room in the basement that was full of all types of stuff.
There were just so many toys, I just didn't have time to play with
Well,
them all.
Luckily, there was no snakes that crawled over.
and we did have a copy of Terror in the Toy Box as well.
We got a bunch of toys at this yard sale that ladies said a snake had crawled all over. That's
We
how
were-
we got all our
We
toys.
were in Florida at a yard sale.
You son of a...
Well, I think, I guess if we have to boil it down to 3, I think it would have to be G.I. Joe, was a definite of the '80s. Being a child of the '80s, then a Transformers. Me and a friend of mine. Shout out to a friend of mine named Danny, who I hadn't seen in years. But if he's
a listener,
if he's one of the fives of the people that listen to us, he'll know what I'm talking about. Transformers was our big thing, and then I would say that the Star Wars toys was huge for me. I had a ton of them things. I wish I still had some. Like I had the original Millennium Falcon from Empire Strikes Back. I had a Death Star space station from the late '70s.
Hashtag blessed.
Yeah, I had all that stuff. G.I. Joe. I had everything. I think I had most of everything except for the USS Flag.
Huh.
So it would definitely have to be G.I. Joe, Star Wars, and Transformers was the big three.
Timbo, what about you, bud?
You know, I really was into obscure toy lines. Like I liked the Silverhawks
Silverhawks were awesome.
and like Cops, the COPS ones.
Those
and
were great too.
Jason and the Argonauts. Aaron, what was that? No, Jason and the Wheeled Warriors.
Okay, so are you talking about Micronauts? But
No. But my top three, I love G.I. Joe. I would beg my mom every time we went to the store to get me this G.I. Joe figure. Like, Mom, I've always wanted this G.I. Joe figure. Always wanted. Who is it? It's Tracker. He comes with an inflatable boat. I've always wanted. Okay, next week we go to the store. Mom, I've always wanted this G.I. Joe. Who is it? His name's Outback. He looks like Chuck Norris. You know, I always begged that mom for that. And then Star Wars. Aaron and I had a ton of the Star Wars figures, and we still do. And then for me, it's Ninja Turtles. I can still remember the day we were in Walmart and we saw Ninja Turtle figures for the first time, and I was just like, "What is this?" And I was blown away by it. So that's my three.
That's a good one.
Aaron, what about you?
I mean, I could mention all the lines you guys have already mentioned, so I'm gonna go obscure. I remember when I was a little kid, I used to get those muscle figures.
Oh,
yes, I forgot about those.
Yeah, those were great. And then Monsters in My Pocket.
Yeah, I love Monsters in the Pocket.
Because we learned about all kinds of obscure monsters we had never heard of.
It was monster myths. They were small monsters, and you could put them in your pocket, Charlie. That's all it was. Okay? Had nothing to do with whatever you're thinking.
Charlie said off camera right now, but he's losing his mind.
All right. Let's get serious here. Toy line number 3 was Mad Balls.
Oh, yeah.
So those are my 3. Muscles, Monsters in My Pocket, and Mad Balls.
Oh, the Mad Balls were the ones with the crazy faces, right?
Yeah, you could squeeze it. You could squeeze your Mad Balls.
The Cyclops and
This is
had the one horde.
this is where I try to save this podcast and it doesn't work.
Was there
Hey, Charlie, what's your three?
There was
thoughts?
one Mad Ball with 3 eyes, right?
Yeah. There's one that had 8
Triple
eyes.
something.
You gotta stop talking there.
Charlie, please
Okay, so
save us, Charlie.
my 3 favorite toy lines were the, of course,
Oh,
G.I.
gosh.
Joe. Cops, because they were specifically
Okay.
just a larger version of G.I. Joes. And it wasn't, I didn't have the whole toy line, but I had one of the action figures, Brave Star. That was super cool.
Yeah, it was a good show.
Oh,
What was
yeah.
that?
Is that the one
Brave
with the
Star-
cowboy hat?
That
Like
was the
futuristic
cowboy.
cowboy.
Oh, yeah.
I had Brave Star
Was
and
that
his
the one with
horse.
the horse that
Yes.
fought with him?
Man,
Not fought with him, but fought
Like
alongside.
back
side
to
by
back.
side.
Yeah.
He would.
His arch nemesis was a horse.
no,
No, his arch nemesis was like a zombie dude.
Oh,
like a zombie
Like-
outlaw.
Almost basically Jonah Hex was the villain.
Yeah.
oh, yeah.
So
I had
there
like a
was another
mechanical
one that
arms.
came
yeah,
out
okay.
that it's probably a little bit past you guys' prime. There was Bots Masters. That was a pretty good one.
I don't remember that.
This guy named Ziv Zoolander had a bunch of robots.
That was the one where
One of the
like,
greatest theme songs ever.
Yes.
Bots Masters.
Yeah, that had like this
Ninja Boys.
different. Like there was a sports themed robot.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I remember
Sports
that. Yeah.
Boys and
You had to
Ninja.
put on the 3D glasses that no one had.
Yeah.
What was
It's Bots Masters.
what was the toy line where it was? He came with it was Captain. Was it
Captain Power.
Captain Planet.
Was it Captain Power? The one that had like the
Captain Power.
the base where you could like push down the button, and if you had the video, it would interact with the video. but
Right.
Nobody had
Yeah,
the
it was
video.
Captain Power.
Yeah, that was Captain
I
Power.
have
Yeah,
no
I remember
idea
that.
what that is.
It had a cart. It had a
early 80s.
it had like a half-hour show that would come on. I think it came on like Fox or something there for a while. But they also had because you had like the VHS tape video game system that came with that. I can vaguely remember that.
That's beyond me.
That was way back in there.
Did Brian? Did you mention Mask?
I did.
Yeah, Mask was a great one.
Mask was fantastic.
Hey, Tim,
Yeah.
do you remember when I had the ultra rare Luke Skywalker in the Stormtrooper outfit?
Yeah.
And I put him in the
I know.
Millennium Falcon.
I know
and
where we're going
I
with
crashed
this.
it. I crashed it into the side of the house and knocked off like the front chunk of his head.
You perfectly knocked off his hair, and so
Yeah.
that he had
He was balding.
he had the perfect like hair on the sides, hair on the back,
Receding
no hair on
hairline.
top.
Must have been a violent
He
accident.
looked kind of like Ray Combs, the host of Family Feud.
Oh wow! So speaking of Ray Combs, Aaron, so give us a little bit of the information about the demise of Toys R Us. You've been reading the Wikipedia page for all of about 16 hours now. So
So most of this is because a investment corp did a hostile takeover back in 2005. It took over. I think you might remember that if you were going to Toys R Us at the time, they did all those like remodeling where they were putting like the playgrounds and like there was like a photo studio and like all kinds of crazy stuff.
oh
You
yeah, and they
remember
had
that?
like the children's birthday parties and stuff like that.
Yeah. And then what happened was, so this investment company was investing in a lot of other stuff, and then they started putting all the Toys R Us profits to the debts they were amassing. And apparently it was like they're like $5 billion in debt.
So kind of like a Ponzi scheme, right?
Yeah, I think it's a lot of these investment corps do. So it's pretty common. But I was going to talk about also, toy prices like skyrocketed the last like 10 years. Because toys used to be like $5 or less, and now if you want a Marvel Legend figure, they're like what are they, 15?
No,
20.
more than
Oh,
that.
it's
They're like 20
ridiculous.
at least.
And a lot of that has to do with what happened in 2008 when they passed this crazy law in Congress about the lead in toys. And because used to they would mix the lead in the plastic to make the toys more durable and cheaper. And then Congress said, no, you can't do that because you're killing kids, which they weren't. There were such trace amounts it wasn't hurting anything.
But
because of that,
back in the earlier toys that being made, especially that came overseas, they came over with so much lead that it did harm kids and have effects on them.
Yeah.
But
they went overboard in removing the lead to the point where you remember when all of a sudden the Marvel Legends got really cheap all of a sudden.
Gosh, they were terrible. I remember when they first came out, they were so fantastic. And then I can't remember what series it was, but there was a figure. It was it came with
the figure that really stood out to me is when I knew they were cheap was the X-23 figure from the Wolverine series.
Yeah, it was that series that came out because it
was
had
like, what in the world?
It had X-23. It had the orange suited Wolverine in it. That series was really bad.
There was one that came with Reed Richards' son, and then Herbie the robot. And
Yeah,
those were
I can't remember what
terrible.
series
I don't know
that
which figure
was.
that came with, but those were terrible.
They're right around like Series 7 or 8 in Marvel Legends. It really went downhill.
And also when they went from the all plastic packaging to the paperback.
Well, when we started collecting them, we're talking about Marvel Legends here for a second. As one of the original Marvel Legends, we're talking Series 1 through like 4 or 5, is probably one of the greatest collectible items that I ever collected, just because of the packaging of itself did not look like a kid's toy. It was almost like you would it reminded me more of like what you would find like at a Comic-Con or something like that, or an industry,
like at a comic book store.
Yeah, something along those lines. But some of them original Marvel Legends figures were just incredibly detailed, incredibly good looking. The Thing was one of the best ones I think they ever did. The
Juggernaut.
Juggernaut was
so good.
All that. But
the base for Captain America, the base for that figure was so detailed.
Yeah.
It was just amazing.
And the thing about them is that even in it was like 2001, 2002, because me and Tim were on a staff together, so we would get like an hour to 4 hour lunch, depending on what was going on during the day, and we would go to Toys R Us or somewhere and buy these things, or Walmart, and you could get them for like $8,
Yeah.
$8 or $9. So when we would go buy them, you would just go buy the whole series. I mean, it was just like
You could buy the whole series for $50.
Yeah.
You know?
and that was what was so cool about them. And then when they went over to when I think it was Toy Biz, Hasbro took them.
Yeah.
That's when they got really bad, and that's when they got really cheap.
Now, one of the earlier figures, but that was terrible, was that Electra figure. Was one of the worst figures they made, though.
Yeah.
Right.
Gosh, it was terrible.
So to get back on subject a little, so how big of an impact do you think this is going to have on the toy industry once Toys R Us is gone? Because they have, I'm looking at Wikipedia, they have 698 locations in the United States. So if all those go away next week or next month or whatever,
So
how
let
much
me-
is that going to hurt?
Let me
the
ask
toy
you this real
lines?
quick. So I know the headline as of today is that there are rumors that Toys R Us will start closing every single store as of next week. So like they'll do liquidation sales on all their things in about a month. They'll all be gone. Is that how I'm? Is that
That's the rumor. I don't know. I mean, you could still have some investors step in at the last minute and save
Sure.
this or whatever.
But
Like
like
what they do with Radio Shack. and
let's say
stuff.
hypothetically it goes that route, and this is Toys R Us is the last all toy store, right?
Mhm.
I mean,
That's a major chain.
major
Yeah.
chain.
I mean, I guess you could, comic book stores are kind of the next thing that have toys in them,
Well, I think ultimately one of the downfalls for Toys R Us is that you can go anywhere now and get toys. I mean, FYE has toys, Hot Topic has toys, Box Lunch,
Well, I mean, that's the thing, too. is-
Target, Walmart.
But Toys R Us is always more expensive to me.
And you could
Yeah.
always, at this point, I don't. Most of the things that I buy, unless I need it right at that moment, I will go to the store, look at the price, and then just buy it online because generally you can find it cheaper on Amazon.
Yeah, but when you're talking about places like Box Lunch or FYE or any of those type places, you're not talking about your standard everyday, I'm going to take this and play with it toy.
Sure.
You're
Right.
talking about your
Collectible pieces.
collectible pieces.
Yeah.
Stuff I have up here on what we call the shelf of awesomeness. Even like Disney store, you go in there and you buy a toy, but it's collectible pieces like the die-cast metal stormtroopers and stuff that I have. That's something that you're not going to take out of the package. So Toys R Us always was the place you went to get the toy you're going to take out of the box and play with up until the last, 10 years of their existence.
So, but like physical locations now, Walmart and Target are probably the quote unquote toy store.
In Meyer.
Yeah.
But you
Nobody
look
goes to
at
Meyer, John.
toy companies like Lego and Hasbro, a lot of their sales are through Toys R Us or like what's the company that does like the movie figures, NECA or
Yeah.
NECA?
Yeah, NECA.
Yeah. A lot of their stuff is only at Toys R Us, so this is going to really hurt a lot of these companies.
Yeah, a lot of
Yeah.
places like the Legos, though, they've started to have their own stores where they can control the pricing better and control the inventory. So,
I think the other thing, but going back to a point you made here, the prices of toys are just astronomical now. I mean, Legos, to buy a Lego set now, you've got to either pay $20 or like cut off a finger or something, and sell it on the black market just to get like a 100-piece Lego set for your kid. It is crazy.
But think about the last time you were in a Toys R Us that wasn't during Christmas. Weren't you like one of the 4 people that were there that weren't employees?
Yeah, they're not that crowded.
They're. I mean, I've walked into Toys. I don't go that often, but if I'm out that way, I'll go into Toys R Us and there'll be like 3 cars in the parking lot, and those are all the employees.
Well, see, the thing for me was growing up, especially when I got a little bit older, Toys R Us was the place that you went to buy the latest Nintendo game that you were looking for, and that was the big thing for me. So that's where all me and my friends went to buy it. I mean, that's what you had because you didn't have back in the day. You didn't have Walmart on every street corner here in this end of Louisville. Target was there, but they weren't really into the games. You had a couple games, but you go to Toys R Us and it was just 2 rows of Nintendo games.
I remember
And now you don't need that so much
You got
in your life.
GameStop.
You got the
Or you
GameStops.
just download it from
Yeah.
home.
Or most people just now download the game system or Amazon. I go on Amazon. I buy almost everything now on Amazon.com. So I think that's been a big hit.
All right, guys, we're going to take a quick commercial break. We'll be right back.
Does your dog have lice?
Is your dog unhappy with life?
Does your dog have 3 mad balls? Hold on. Music's playing, Aaron. All right,
Well, it
music's
was
done, Aaron.
it was playing.
All right, go for it, Aaron.
All right.
Oh, now it's
No,
playing
no,
again.
Factoid for you.
Hold on, Aaron. Hold on.
And welcome back to Five Live Bears. Aaron has a quick factoid for us from Toys R Us. Go ahead with your factoid, Aaron.
This is for our friend Jeffrey the Giraffe, or Joffrey, however you want to pronounce it. I think me and Tim are the only ones who ever called him Joffrey. Anyhow, he was originally named Dr. G. Raff. So there you go. There's your factoid.
But he
Doctor.
lost his license
Amazing.
for doing backward
Okay,
bypass
when
surgery.
Aaron and I were kids, we swear they called him Joffrey, the giraffe.
Oh, it's a Mandela effect moment.
It is.
That's
Aaron
the
and
thing
I
is
swear.
he worked for the Joffrey
We either-
Eye Centers, and he lost his license because
That's
he
a
wasn't
little-
licensed.
It's always been Jeffrey.
So he had to change his name.
Shut your mouth. It was
Yeah,
Joffrey.
Berenstain, not
It's the
Berenstain.
Berenstain
Oh, we could get onto that, but we'll save that for another podcast.
Anyways, but back to your point. I remember when Mortal Kombat came out, where you went to Toys R Us to put in your reservation for Mortal Kombat.
Yeah.
I mean, I now that you bring that up, I do think probably with GameStop, especially, and other places popping up like that, it did hurt Toys R Us's business because
Well,
they lost that.
But you also remember we
And
used to
us.
go to KB Toys. That was 9. They've closed 9 years ago. Then before that, here in Louisville, we had Children's Palace
Okay.
that you would go to, and you would also go to Service Merchandise.
Mm-hmm.
And
Does
you know,
anybody else remember at Children's Palace how they had the inside the store? They had the indoor playset,
Yes,
like not indoor, but ENDOR.
yes.
It had the top of it was the Ewok village, like a
Mhm.
almost like a tree house,
Yeah,
and the bottom there was a
we had.
swing, but it was a land speeder.
Yeah, we've got.
Or,
it. Oh no,
Not land speeder.
Yeah,
speeder
I
bike.
remember that. You could buy it like to put in your backyard.
Yeah,
yeah.
it was amazing. And of course, it had the sign that said, "Do not play on this," and there'd be like 15 kids waiting to play on it, and the sound was all crumpled.
Yeah.
KB Toys. I loved KB Toys, but they were the most overpriced toy store known to mankind.
Well, but when they started having the outlets,
Yeah.
like the clearance
Yeah.
stores, like the one right
Yeah.
down the street from here by Walmart, that was great because you could, you'd walk in and be like, "Oh, these Marvel Legends that are normally 10 over here at Walmart are 7."
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you'd find one like Toad or somebody that'd be like, "Oh, it's $1.25. Well, I'm gonna buy all 3 of them."
Yeah, and you'd find really old and obscure toys. Like I found like a life-size mini-me doll from
I was gonna say they had
Austin Powers too.
They must have bought
Still-
stock in Austin
still have
Powers
that.
because they had all kinds of Austin Powers stuff.
I was like in college, and there was one in the Bashford Manor Mall, like one of 4 stores left, and we'd go over there. And I walked in one day, and there was that mini me. It was like 10 years old, and it was like on sale for like $7. So I grabbed that bad boy.
Do you still have it, or did your
Oh
wife
no, I
hide it
still
from you?
have
Okay.
it. You squeeze his chest, and he goes, me.
Wow. All right.
So
Sorry.
I was going to bring up a company that'd be interesting to watch is Hasbro through all this. Because if you look, their movies are not doing that great. No one cares about Transformers.
Well, Battleship was fantastic. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Last Jedi toy sales are down, and now Toys R Us going away. I'm curious to see how they're going to deal with this.
Well,
Like,
isn't-
did they put all their eggs in the wrong basket? You know?
Isn't Hasbro and Mattel? Isn't there talk of a merge there or something like that? Or Mattel might buy Hasbro?
There was something. I don't remember which companies it was, but there was something.
I mean, but
Yeah.
the thing that really sticks out to me is like my childhood thoughts of going to the designated quote unquote toy store. Like, granted, we have that still, and Kinsey gets to experience it, but like that is going away. Like that is going to cease to exist.
But
But our
go ahead.
kids
Aaron.
even going to care because they're all on their cell phones, and
Well-
my kids, they hardly play with the toys they have because they're usually playing video games on the phone.
Well, that's just because you're a terrible parent.
I know.
But kind of to that point, though, when we were kids, you didn't have the internet, so you went to the toy store to look at the toys that you knew your parents weren't going to buy you that day. Now your kids can just look online. Oh, the new toy line's coming out. Oh, look, this is
That's
cool.
true.
You can watch YouTube videos. I mean, not to be old man yells at cloud, but I mean, you hear about kids all the time that don't play video games. They watch videos on YouTube of people playing video games.
Yeah. I mean, but I'll say my kid still loves to go to Toys R Us. Like, loves to go into Toys
Well,
R Us.
she's just going to have to get over it, Tim.
I know,
There's
but
no
I'm
more
just
Toys R Us.
talking about. Stop it.
I was just joking, but
What
now
about
that I've hurt Tim's feelings, Aaron, do you have anything else to say on the topic?
I also think one other factor that you're going to see in the next couple of years is, the generation from the 80s is going to get older. Some, a lot of them are collectors. So you're going to see that age out. And, so I don't know if anything will ever replace Toys R Us at this point. Will there be another big toy chain that rises up, or is this kind of it?
I think
I
it's
just don't know.
I think it's it. Yeah.
Yeah, let's kind of go around the room and kind of give our thoughts about that. Tim,
I think
you go ahead.
specialized stores in general will be less and less. You'll have your generic big stores that carry everything, and you'll have Amazon, who is slowly taking over the world.
Well, I mean, when you can look up an item online, and that's what I like about Amazon. It's like new and used from $4.99 to $20, and you can pick which one you want, as opposed to like if you go to a store and there's this, I need this pair of socks. Well, it's going to cost you this amount of money, whereas you can go online and pick from different vendors. But
I will say, I think the less opportunity you have to come across an item in a physical place, it creates more of the opportunity for the online market to control the price, so that they can control, if it's a rare item, they can control it. And now you don't have that opportunity to get something at a normal price. You're going to have to pay a higher fee for a common item, because now you're only going to be able to get it online, where these retailers who have direct lines with whatever business have the only way you can get these items now.
that's a good point. John, you've been kind of quiet. Are you mourning the death of Toys R Us, or just have been a rough week? Or
I think the thing about it is what I'm mourning more than just the death of Toys R Us, because it is. I mean, that's part of all of 4 or 5 of us that are the 4 of us in the room, Aaron on the phone. It's all part of your makeup. I mean, Tim said that his daughter loves to go through Toys R Us. Still continues to do it. When Susie was little, I'm talking old enough to walk all the way up through, 5th grade or so. Friday was Toys R Us Day. I mean, that's what we did. I mean, because I was off on Fridays most of the time. So during the summer, that's what we would do. I go to my mom and dad's and pick up my nieces, and she was little. Both of them were little, and Susie's little, and it was like, hey, let's go to Toys R Us. And we could spend hours in Toys R Us just roaming around looking.
And not necessarily buy anything.
No, you didn't buy anything.
That was part of it, yeah.
But I think and Tim said it there a second ago, is the market has changed so much. And I think the dirtiest word that ever got put into the toy business or the idea of toys is the word collectible. The rise of the collectible toy in the last 10 years has absolutely devastated the toy store, in my view, because now everything that you would go in, even in Toys R Us, you would go into Toys R Us and they were more interested in selling, in my view, especially ones here in Louisville, you would have aisles and aisles of these custom figurines and these
they weren't toys
they
anymore.
weren't toys. It was
Yeah.
just something that somebody's going to come in there and snatch and grab and think he's going to put in a box somewhere, and it's going to be worth $200,000 in 20 years. And I think we have lost the essence of what a toy store is. I mean, it was a store to go and buy toys, not to buy a collectible figurine.
Part of that is because a lot of us people from the 80s, quote unquote, didn't grow up mature the way, so we needed more adult, quote unquote, toys, and so they started.
I think
we're the first generation though that didn't have to go get a factory job as soon as we graduated high school.
Well, I think
most of our parents didn't go to college because they had to work to support their families, because they married their high school sweetheart, had to get a job, and so whereas we had the opportunity to just go out and not have to, quote unquote, grow up as soon as we graduated high school. We had the affordability to go to college, and we could still be youthful.
But like going back to John's point, I think they keyed to that market too much.
Well,
I agree.
Especially.
My thing about it is that what you see is, in my view, is what you see on it is, and Toys R Us has done a terrible job of this. And Aaron even talked about this when Toys R Us back in 2004, 2005, this huge, colossal makeover. I think they really shot themselves in the face with that, due to the fact that I hated the store when I walked into the place. Okay, you had this giant play set, which was fine. I mean, I didn't care about that. That kept Susie busy for 40 minutes or so. But then they took out all these really the ones here in Louisville, especially the one on Dixie Highway, which is one we were always in, was heaven. You walk in there and you start down that aisle of G.I. Joe, and it was a whole aisle that seemed in the day to run for hundreds of yards down the store. And it didn't, but it was it was every G.I. Joe figure imaginable. And on the bottom shelves, they had all the vehicles and things like that. And it was just all right there. And then they go to this spoke thing that didn't make any sense, and they pile their shelves full of all these figurines and Jason Vanderhoos and Freddy Krueger and
lots of cars, lots of vehicles.
I can read
and stuff, and it just got to the point where I was like, forget it. I don't want.
But do you also think maybe part of that too? It's like it seems like today with the girls that as I watch these cartoons with them, it seems like almost every month there's a new cartoon series coming out.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when we were little, you only had like your Saturday morning cartoons, which was maybe 3 or 4 different things, and your afternoon one. So in total, you might have had like 10 lines of toys. Well, now Disney by themselves has 25 lines of toys, and it's like you got to have room for all those on your shelf. So you've got just all this stuff together. To your point, right? There's no longer that Transformer or G.I. Joe line that you just got. Oh, I got
and
whatever.
that creates excess amounts of toys that don't sell.
Yeah.
That I'm sure hurts the bottom dollar.
Not everybody wants a Doc McStuffins toy or whatever it is.
I mean, I do, but
look, we know you do, Charlie.
Brian, let me
one,
ask you a
I'll talk about
question
it.
that hasn't been touched on. I'm surprised you guys haven't touched on this. As pop collectors, do you think this is going to affect your collection of
No.
Funko Pops?
I haven't.
I asked Brian. I want his opinion.
No, I think the point. I think Tim made the point already that we already see in the pop collectible is that when you can't go to a store and have a chance at getting it, you immediately see, okay, hey, you can go buy this pop online for $15, and then 30 seconds later, it's on eBay for $85,
Yep.
or 150 or 200 or whatever people think it's worth, and so we're already experiencing that now. So the idea or the notion that if Walmart all of a sudden says we're not carrying toys anymore, and now you're basically stuck to going to a website, I do think you're going to see higher prices for toys because for me the part about
there's less market.
Yeah, and like as a parent, like I want to find a good deal on the toys that I want for my kids. Like I can't just afford to go out and spend the full price. So to me, Toys R Us was always a high price store because you never got a sale there hardly. I mean, every now and then you'd find one, but whereas a Walmart or an Amazon or even Kohl's has toys and you can find them on sale at times. But finding a deal like to your point, Charlie, where you can go on eBay and I can look up the toy my kid wants and there's 200 of them and somebody starts it at 99 cents and I can be like, maybe I got a chance of getting a bargain here. I'm going to take that chance because I always, in the back of your mind, you always knew if you didn't get it, you can just go to Toys R Us and pay the full price for
retail,
it.
yeah.
Well, and that's the same thing. I was going to the pop thing as a pop collector. The issue was Toys R Us shutting down and not being able to go there and get pops does not affect me because I can't remember the last pop I bought at Toys R Us.
Yeah.
Most of what you get there, and of course my collection is to a point now where I'm not just buying anything. Looking for specialty items and things like that, exclusives. Mm-hmm. And Toys R Us, while they had some of that stuff, most of their stuff in that area, as much as they were into figurines and collectibles, was usually just a bunch of common junk.
Yeah.
It was usually junk.
Toys
junk
R Us
pops.
would get their Toys R Us exclusives, which was the only time people really went and bought a pop at Toys R Us. Other than that, you go there and it's just rows and rows of pops of just nobody buying them.
Mm-hmm.
Well, as we're wrapping up, I have one quick question for everybody. And Tim, we'll go to you last because you need to think about this. What was your favorite toy you got from Toys R Us when you were a kid?
Oh no, you should.
Or
I got
if
that.
it's something you didn't get but you regret not getting when you were a child
From Toys R Us.
from Toys R Us specifically, like
Super Nintendo.
So that's the thing you remember getting, or the thing you
I
didn't?
would make this at this point in time when it came out. My mom or dad or my grandmother would come and pick me up from school, and for a month straight after school, either my mom or my grandparents would drive me to Toys R Us, and I would play the demo of Street Fighter 2
Yep.
in the aisleway for like an hour after school, and begging, like, I don't ever have to get another gift in my life. I just want the Super Nintendo. And my mom and dad being like, no, you have a Nintendo. you don't need a Super Nintendo.
But it's 16-bit.
Yeah.
It's 8 more bits.
And I just remember like just playing that Street Fighter 2 and Blanca lightning somebody up. I was just like, oh, this is the greatest thing in the world. And then that year for Christmas, that was the only thing I got. But by God, I got it and loved it. But that is the greatest game the greatest toy I ever got from Toys R Us.
Aaron, what is your favorite toy or favorite memory of Toys R Us?
Not really favorite toy, but favorite memory was back when I used to work with our good buddy Chris that we went to high school with. Every day during lunch break, we would go up to Toys R Us and just play whatever games they had on demo there. So we played a lot of like Gauntlet and some other games. And so for a long time, Toys R Us was like the only people I bought video games from, because I felt like, they were so nice to me. They would let me try new game demos when I was there. So the lady would tell me about all the deals and stuff. And so just for a long time, I was very loyal to them. So those were fun times.
Mine is also video game related. I remember when the Wolverine game, which was a terrible, terrible game for the NES, came out. But they clearanced it down to $10, and it was in their ad and everything. And you remember how you used to have to go up to, they would have a picture of the game and those stupid pieces of paper that you took to the counter. I would go, like, for the entire week, we would go every stinking day to see if they had more. Because they would say, we'll probably get some more in tomorrow. And we go up there, and I'd look, and still, sorry, sold out. Sorry, sold out. Couldn't get a rain check. And I just remember, like, oh, I really want this game. Not necessarily because it was a great game. It was all right for an NES game. But like, I didn't have a lot of games, and a game that was $10 I could afford. So it was like, oh. And then finally the sale was up, and they never got any more in. And, of course, we wouldn't drive off Dixie Highway to get anything, so I just didn't get it. John, what about you?
What an awful story.
It's a sad story.
That was a sad one, man.
Let me tell you about a great memory from my childhood when it didn't pan out.
Well, I mean, I am Charlie Brown, so it makes sense.
Best toy I ever got or had purchased for me at Toys R Us would have to be the night my mom and dad, we went up there. We used to do that on Friday every once in a while. Dad would be like, oh, we're going to pick out something. And so we're like, all right. So this night I got to buy Tomax and Zaymot.
Oh, yeah.
G.I. Joe. And just because they were, I guess we were all in a good mood that evening, they also bought me the four-wheeler that they rode on together. Remember, it was kind of weird, but they rode on a four-wheeler together. And so Tomax and Zaymot.
They're weird anyway, though.
Yeah, well, that's what I mean. It was GI Joe stuff. That's the way GI Joe did. It's kind of weird the way they put them together and they run around. But anyway, they had them on there, and that's what we bought. That's what we got that evening. One thing that I regret back in the day that I didn't buy was there was a series of toys that came out. I think it was about 1987, 1988, and the only thing I remember it going by was called Space, and it was these
Above and Beyond.
No, that was a Fox television show, but it had these little figures. They were probably 2 inches, and they had magnets on their feet. Yes, Starcom. Yes, that's what it was called.
Oh yes, I had most of the Starcom figures.
And my biggest regret, I think, of all time was I think it was like 1987, and they had like the space shuttle, and it was like on clearance or something. And I wanted to buy that thing so bad. And my mom was like, "You're too old to be playing with toys like that." Because I was like 12.
You're wrong, Stovey.
It was like,
how dare you?
Look at this room. Look at this thing.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I mean, I think I went nuts and started buying toys after I had moved out.
That was the moment.
That was the moment that put me on my psychosis.
And Tim, what's yours, bud?
I have two things that stick out. I remember we reserved Mortal Kombat, and I remember we were on vacation, and it came out the day we got back from vacation, and Mom and Dad took us up there like 5 minutes before the store closed, and we ran to the back of the store to get the paper slip, and so we could buy Mortal Kombat. And I remember a lady like yelled at us, "Don't you know we're closed?" But anyways, I just remember like, Aaron, do you remember like rushing to get Mortal Kombat as the store was closing?
Bought the wrong controllers. I remember that.
That lady rushed us out. And then I remember when I would have been around 12-ish, Dad was preaching a revival up in Shinkatank, Virginia or something weird like that, and we were driving around and we went.
Shinsuke Nakamura, Virginia. Yeah, that's my favorite part.
We went to a Toys R Us in Delaware, of all places. And I just remember turning this aisle, and this is back when Aaron and I collected Marvel and X-Men figures, like pre-Marvel Legend. And I remember turning this aisle, and it was just, like you said, it looks like, in my mind, it was the most giant, biggest wall of all the figures we were looking for. We got Gambit and Banshee, and it was just like, you just want to like put your hands in between the two rows and just pull them all to
I
you.
know.
I got all the figures. But I don't know. That just always stood out to me.
All right. Well, as we can wrap up tonight, we're going to finish up with something that Tim has been looking forward to for the past 17 years. He's gonna do a Would You Rather. Tim, go for it.
Yes. I have a Would You Rather, guys. Would you rather have to wear wet jeans for 6 months,
Oh God!
or have cold water drip down your back every 30 seconds for a year? So wear wet jeans for 6 months, or cold water drip down your back every 30 seconds for a year.
It's torture.
Yeah.
There's a name for that. It's Chinese water torture.
No, that's not down your back.
Well, it's still the repeated dripping. That's
Look, parameters. It doesn't happen while you sleep. All right, so you're allowed to sleep.
that I'm always going to sleep. I'm going to go with jeans. Brian, what are you going with?
Yeah, it's jeans.
Yeah.
Anybody seen Charlie? Hold on, just be quiet.
Brian, would you go with the wet jeans or the Chinese water torture?
Oh, the wet jeans.
John?
As Tim mentioned, you don't have to wear them all
Aaron,
the
are
time.
you
said
coloring right now?
He's brushing his teeth or something.
No, I'm playing Monkey's Balloon Tower or something. on beer.
Gosh.
Sorry, we're boring you.
Aaron, what are you doing, Aaron? Wet jeans or water on your back?
I'd go with wet jeans because I think the water in the back would drive you mad.
It's true. John?
I'm going to go with the water down the back because I'm thinking of chafing issues,
Yeah,
and
that-
I'm not
It didn't say how long
I'm
you
not
had to
down
wear
with.
'em.
Huh?
Didn't say how long you had to wear.
No, I mean you're wearing the wet
It
jeans
didn't
like
say that.
like you would normally wear jeans.
No,
Yeah.
that's not what
Like
it
right
said.
now,
Well,
we'd all
okay.
be sitting here in wet jeans
No,
right now.
we would not be sitting
We,
here.
we'd
No,
all, we'd
hang
all
on,
have John's
wait.
pants or John's.
John's pants. What?
We'd
John-
all be in John's pants at the same time.
Oh my gosh!
No,
place is
up. There we go.
John's
It's off the rails.
furniture would be soaking wet right now because we'd all be sitting here
No,
with
because he
wet
put plastic
wet
around
jeans.
it
Okay,
like an
so
old dude.
before Tim gives his answer, hold on 1 second. Tim?
What was that?
Charlie's playing with the sound
I am.
effects.
Oh.
Wrong thing. Anyway, go ahead, Tim. I was trying to do a drum roll,
Charlie,
but-
for
Wow,
those who
cool.
just started listening, Charlie's learning to run the board. And
It's Charlie just playing random.
It was the drum roll sound
I think it'd have to be wet jeans because like the water drip would just be insane. But like neither sounds appetizing in any sort of way.
No, I wouldn't want to eat wet jeans or water down my back. All right, thanks for listening, guys. We appreciate you listening to us on YouTube, SoundCloud, Apple
Can
Podcast.
you imagine how every
And-
night when you took those wet jeans off, how much of a relief it
we got
would be?
That's what
the
I'm saying.
blog. We got a
And
blog
yes, I
now
was saying,
too. We're on a blog.
What is the blog?
flbpodcast.blogspot.com. That is
Sounds
where
so
we're at.
official.
And John talks about how much The Last Jedi is the greatest movie we've ever
His
seen.
I did.
movie
I
of
did
all
re-
time.
That's a lie.
All right, thanks, guys. Like and review us on Apple Podcast.
See you later, players.
Sorry, Brent.
Aaron,
Spiders.
Sorry, Aaron. We didn't actually get to hear you because Charlie's playing Auga sounds. Auga! Auga!